Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I can't see if everybody's here. Thank you so much for coming. This is Junction Reads new online version, and we have Brent Van Staalduinen back as a reader. He has hosted as well as read for us with Saints Unexpected. So welcome, Brent.
It's
Thank
great to
you.
be back.
Thank you so much for.
Actually, this is one of the first reading series I ever read out when I got back in Canada. So it's
Oh,
pretty,
really?
yeah. Being able
That's
to come back from time to time is a real honor. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's great.
Thank you.
So before we officially get started, I'm just going to do a land acknowledgement, but also ask everyone to go to their view of the page and change it to speaker view. And Kaylee, our event coordinator, is going to make sure that you see the right people on the screen when we're talking. So I am in Tekatonto. Brent, you are in Hamilton, and if I had more than two brain cells, I would have thought about the land acknowledgement for Hamilton. But I am in Tekatonto, which for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Wendat, Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. It is still home to many Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community on their territory. So before I share your biography with everyone and you get to share an extract from Boy, I'm wondering if you could share with everyone what you are reading right now.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you again for the heads up before. Otherwise, I totally forget that stuff. I'm terrible at recalling things on the fly. But I'm reading Blackwater Rising by Atticus Locke. I'm about 3/4 of the way through, and I'm not a real mystery person, but it's kind of a nice mix of mystery and thriller, and yeah, it's great. I'm really enjoying it. I've been on a bit of a thriller kick. So
Is he Canadian?
I don't. That's she, and I'm not
Oh,
sure. I think it's a she. Um, but yeah, no, I think she's American.
oh, okay, good. I
I
often
had
think
to
about,
Google the book earlier, and I think the picture that came up. I don't want to assume, of course, but I mean, I
right. It's funny because I watch a lot of mystery, like I watch a lot of thriller TV, but I never read it. So it's always nice to get a recommendation for,
well, for me, mystery, like particularly mystery, is there's too much dialogue,
right.
which is ironic because I love writing dialogue. I know, I
Yeah,
know.
you do it well.
Thank you.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
people always look at me, go, "Yeah, really?"
Yeah,
Yes, true confessions.
yeah, you don't like that? That's funny. Well, thanks for that. Kaylee will share. She has shared a link to that novel if anyone's interested
Oh, it's
in
Attica,
looking.
not Atticus.
Attica.
Yes, that is helpful.
Okay, but
Via
yes,
culpa. Sorry about that.
that's okay. Okay, so I'm going to share your biography, and then I'm excited for you to read. So, everybody, Brent Van Staalduinen's fiction has won many awards, including the Bristol Short Story Prize, the Lush Triumphant Literary Award, the Fiddlehead Best Short Story Award, and many more. Nothing But Life is his third novel and his second published by Dundurn Press. Boy, his novel that was published just over a year ago, was published in, I can't even remember when it was, 2020 sometime. His debut novel, Saints Unexpected, which Junction Reads had the pleasure of listening to you read from, was published by Invisible Publishing. Brent has a short story collection, Cut Road, coming from Guernica in 2022. You can find many of his short stories in a variety of literary journals, and I did find a few in the archives of some of them. Brent writes and continues his passion for all things literary from Hamilton, Ontario, where he lives with his wife and two girls. Brent, if
Hello.
you can share.
Thank you. Yes. Again, it's such a privilege to be here. Yeah, these opportunities, especially right now, they're a little farther and fewer between, and so I'm really grateful for the opportunity. So the story is about a guy named Wendell, a kid named Wendell, who's going through a tough summer, and he had an even tougher life before he came to Hamilton. His stepfather, Jesse, was a school shooter, and his mother has taken Dills, what we call Wendell, to Hamilton to start fresh. But life in the post shadows of an event like that is hard, just as a vast understatement. And he makes a mistake and hurts one of his classmates. And as a result, he ends up having to do community service in his local park, my local park, just around the corner, actually, um, picking up trash. And so he is out and about with his day, picking up trash, hot and sweaty and gross. And this is the scene. The scene I'm going to read is where he meets. Well, sorry, he doesn't meet, but this is where his friend Mia comes into the story. And Mia is one of his classmates, but he's always been a little bit intimidated by her. And we also meet Gal, who is sort of his very informal supervisor while he's cleaning the park. He's the park manager. And this is where they meet. The watch's blurred hands tell me that it's almost noon. So I walk to a nearby rubbish bin and drop my bag in, stick my picker-upper in the ground, and walk over to the hedges. I can hear Gal's voice as I get close, then a girl's voice, both speaking another language. Arabic, I think. Gal says something and the girl laughs. I can smell weed smoke too. I stop. Shit. There are reasons guys and girls meet in the dark to smoke up. But I hear Gal calling out my name from the inside, or from inside the bushes, and I'm busted. Awkward. I'm heading home for lunch. No, please come in, Gal says. Oh, that's okay. Please, I insist. I need to. Do not be shy. Come. The girl says something too low for me to hear. Gal laughs. She giggles. Well, if it wasn't awkward before, it sure as heck is now. I start to walk away. Wendell, stop, I hear the girl say to my back, laughter still in her voice. We're not making out or anything. The curiosity comes back in a rush. She knows my name. Huh. I feel my feet carrying me back to the opening in the hedge, into the darkness. Branches arch up and over the path. My eyes take a moment to adjust, but there's enough light in them there's enough light to see them meet overhead, like the bones of a big church, a cathedral even. Gal and the girl are sitting together on the ground, their backs against the worn trunks of a pair of trees. Gal's head is turned, ready to hear me, though I'm not saying anything. He's not smiling, but he looks content. He has a tiny joint in his hand, the smoke swirling lazy around the space. The girl has a blanket over her legs, a book face down on her lap to mark the page. I recognize her right away, from my class. In the dim light, her short hair and her eyes are the same dark color, almost black. She's wearing a tank top, and I can see her arms, muscular, lean, strong. I don't know much about her. She's a competitive wrestler away from school, so she doesn't hang around. Always sits at the desk closest to the door, last to arrive, first to leave. No one in my class talks to her. The girls can't relate. The guys are just plain scared. You're Mia, I say, a little stupidly. Yep, and you're Wendell. Or should I call you Cutter, like everyone else? I know, Mia laughs. I'm kidding. Personally, I think Pat had it coming. The knife, though, was maybe a bit too far. It was definitely a bit far, I say. It was the most entertaining thing to happen all year, she says. Knife? Gal asks. Who is Pat? Mia laughs again and gives him the 10-second version of my story, laid out plain and brutal. Hearing it feels like thorns behind my eyes. Am I a terrible person or what? At the end, Gal simply nods. So that's why you're here. You didn't know? I ask. Not specifically. Your caseworker did not tell me. Confidentiality rules, I imagine. He shrugs. It's no matter. You're doing a fine job, so I have no need to know. Between his scowling face and the scars, it doesn't seem like a compliment. Do you want to sit for a bit? Mia asks. I have some protein shake if you'd like. I shouldn't. I'm on lunch and then back to work. But there go my feet again, carrying me in further. Maybe it was the offer of a protein shake, which I have no idea about. It sounds gross. And yet, I feel some branches snagging on my socks and the ankle monitor. I'm wearing shorts all the time now. It's too hot to wear pants. At first, I thought the little black box on my ankle would be like a billboard advertising my delinquency, but no one pays any attention to me. I reach down to clear the wait a minute branches. Jesse's voice seems to drift forward from the past, from the one time he took me hunting. That's what he called those loose branches that snag your clothes. Two things, he said. One, never hurry through the brush. Too many bad things can happen when you're not careful and you're carrying a rifle. Two, never break the branches out of the way. No one needs to know you've been there. Clear as mud? Mom was so pissed at him when we got home that he'd take me out of school without telling her, that he'd sneak me into the woods to shoot at things, to kill for sport. Jesse tried to explain that he didn't hunt for fun, but it didn't matter. Mom's mind was made up. Jesse never took me out again. He taught me things at home. I was so mad at her. The memory is as scorching and heavy as the sun, and the dim corridor through the hedges becomes a blurred, conflicted tangle of black and green and blinding white all at once. Wendell? Mia's voice, concern. I have to go, I say. I'm sorry. I can't get home fast enough. Thanks.
That was great. I love those scenes between Gal and Mia and Dills. They're so dynamic with the road trip that comes ahead. Um, I'm glad you read that extract because I wanted to talk to you about your teen characters with Saints Unexpected and Boy, and now with this specifically YA book. What is it about teen characters that either draws you or that you want to explore?
It's a really good question, actually.
And also Mia
Yeah.
especially. I want to know the inspiration behind her. She's one of the most fantastic teen characters I've read in a long time.
Oh, thanks. Well, Boy and Saints Unexpected, they just began life as stories. And I never really thought about the characters in an intentional way as being teenagers. They were teenagers, of course, but they just kind of came out as the story was coming out. Nothing But Life was the first book I ever wrote that I've written that I knew it was going to be a YA title. So I knew that that's the story that I wanted to tell, and I knew that I wanted Dills to be able to tell it in his teenage voice, of the things that he went through generically, but also of the moment he's in right now. I Yeah, I don't know. I think teenagers are a really interesting voice to write through, whether you're doing it in third person or first person. It takes me out of my uh, unidentified age for a moment when I do write that way. No, I'm 47, it allows me to write in a completely different way of thinking. Yeah, it's an interesting exercise, and I had really good editors for all three books who would navigate through whether I was trying to be too young, too old. Particularly with this one, my editor Susan was wonderful at helping me identify when I was straying away from the teenage voice. And when it comes to Mia, yeah, she just came in there too. It was really, I had Gal in the story already. And I didn't know at that point when Mia made her first appearance that she would be somebody that would impact Dill's life so profoundly. I was being quite naive because I think anytime you write a girl into a story that's being told by a boy, um, teenagers, they're probably going to impact each other a little bit. I also I started to write her as a bit of a foil for Gal. And for those who haven't read the book, Gal is Israeli. He's an Israeli military veteran who fled his time in the Israeli military after the Intifadas. And then Mia, her family is Palestinian. And so I initially they were just going to bounce off each other a little bit and provide some context for that. And the inspiration for that is the neighborhood I live in, actually, because there's a number of people in the neighborhood who have come from these amazingly disparate locations where you put them together and you have um, this wonderful, I don't know what I'm trying to say, these interesting stories as they collide or as they go alongside each other. And I wanted to have a couple of characters do that in my book as well. Now, Mia, as a teenager, it's just, it happens that I was writing somebody into Dill's life, and that's how she came out as a teenager. Um, yeah, she was fun to write. They all were, but she was also quite fun to write.
Yeah. How is it writing Hamilton? Because I haven't read Boy, but Saints Unexpected and this, I found it very perfectly not too much, but but enough that I can feel like I'm walking down a particular street and I'm thinking, I wonder if this is a street that you often walk down, or if you had to drive there to draw it out in your mind.
Well, in general, I'm finding Hamilton just a really interesting place to be. I've spent most of my childhood in Ottawa, spent some time overseas. I did my undergrad here ages and ages ago, but up in the suburban area in Ancaster, and vowed I would never come back. My wife and I both actually said that independently of each other, and we ended up back in Hamilton, which is an incredibly interesting place. And so the general answer is it's just really interesting to me. I'm a kind of a newcomer to the area. It's a bit of an emerging city, lots of great tension between gentrification and, that the other side of things, money creeping in, people from Toronto and other big cities coming here to find a cheap, more reasonable place to live cost wise. But specifically, yes, this is my neighborhood. So nothing but life happens literally in my neighborhood. Dills and his family live in a house that I sort of loosely think of as my own. I use my own house here as inspiration for that. Churchill Park is a very real place, a stone's throw from my house. The aviary is real. Um, the field house is real. The school where I imagined this taking place is real, although it's an elementary school, not a high school. So I just love it. And in terms of keeping it, not wanting to overwhelm the reader with detail of setting, that's always been something I've done in my writing. I like setting a lot, and I want to present just enough that people kind of feel where they are without being too heavy-handed about it. Um, it's a really cool place to write about because not a lot has been written about Hamilton in terms of published novels.
Yeah.
There's been a few, and I've got a number of writer friends now who have written about Hamilton. So there's more than I thought there was, but it's quite a new place to write about, which makes it even more exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's great. It was a really good balance of feeling like you were somewhere, like you feeling like you really were somewhere in the park, but without taking a tour. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think partly with this one as well, given the subject matter of life after a school shooting, I also wanted it to feel a little bit like it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
That the person reading it could be imagining walking through his or her own neighborhood, and that was also part of it. Yeah, it's a delicate balance. I would write more about Hamilton, and I have. I think Boy and Saints Unexpected. Saints Unexpected got described as a love letter to the city, which made me blush,
Yeah.
and Boy was also quite detailed about the eastern part of the city. But those are more, I guess, quote unquote literary books rather than. And I also had to keep the details to a level where my audience would be able to sift through them as well. So
Yeah. For this particular book, you mean?
for this book, yeah, for nothing
Yeah.
but.
Yeah. Um, so the subject matter, I can imagine, was challenging to depict without giving the gory details, which I really thought was done well. Um, there was no need for a content warning, but there was still an emotional depth to the experience. Specifically when Dills references his friend, and in speaking with Jesse, I think you balanced very well the tragedy of it without exploiting any of the details. How challenging was that as a writer to deal with the subject matter for a long period of time?
Well, the subject matter is the research was horrific. Um, I still can't talk about it in depth because
Mm,
of the things that I read and watched and everything like that. Um, I the inspiration to write the book happened after Marjorie Dostomian Douglas in Florida, in Jack and
Florida, yeah,
yeah, in Florida. I had been, of course, the first time I really felt a school shooting was Newtown, when those kids, the grade 5 kids, were
yeah,
slaughtered. But this was new, and the subject matter was really hard. So as I was making my way through all of these incredibly, I'll just say amazing stories, because they contain the horror, they contain the miracles, they contain the triumphs, they contain the courage, the coward. They're just amazing. These stories
Yeah.
of the survivors and the victims and their families. It was really hard. And so I knew pretty early on that I didn't want to spend a lot of time dealing with the descriptive nitty gritty of it. The emotional side of it, I knew I really wanted to explore. Um, on another level, there's been a lot of writing done about it already, about the subject of school shootings, and a number of books that do it very well and far better than I possibly could. So I didn't want to revisit. I didn't want to revisit those that kind of, and that subject matter and sort of overlap as much as possible. And so, as I was working my way through the research, I was asking myself, how do I touch this? And as I often do when I'm encountering difficult subject matter for my research or otherwise, is to take a break. I will look at sort of the artistic things that get produced around that subject as a way of sort of a creative escape with context.
Mhm.
And so there were songs and there were videos and movies and there were poems upon poems of people trying to process through this. But then I encountered Rachel Eliza Griffith's incredible poem 26. And the first line of that poem is, "Your names toll in my dreams." And that's about the Newtown shooting. And
Mhm.
I was disassembled from top to bottom, and I was just completely wrecked. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to keep reading this poem. So I kept reading it, and then I encountered the line, nothing but life dares dying," and so much packed into that one line.
Mhm.
And that's when I knew I had to write it. I had to find this way to tell this teenager's story in a restrained way. And it's also restrained because he's still processing, and he's not yet developed the language to fully explain what he's been through. I mean, he's a teenager, how many of us have that kind of language to adequately describe things when we're teenagers, especially after such an emotional or traumatic event? So I hope I answered your question there. It was a bit of a roundabout thing, but in general, I really didn't want to dabble in and dwell on the minutia of the shooting. I wanted the reader to feel it, and because I wanted them to feel what Dills was feeling rather than what he necessarily saw. There is some detail about what he saw, just enough to let you know that yeah, that he's somebody we need that
Experience
can help.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah. I love what you say about the like he's still going through it.
yeah,
Because that's what I felt probably midway through the book. I thought this isn't really a story of the aftermath so much as it's the story of this kid still living it,
yeah,
which I really liked. Because you're right, there's a lot of art out there right now dealing with the aftermath of it and the fallout and the all the other tragedies. But I really liked that I got to see Dill's processing little things and speaking with his stepdad. I thought was a really powerful choice from a writer's perspective. I really liked that. And I also liked that it wasn't too magical, if you know what I mean. Like it didn't go so far as to be um, anything but that simple spiritual an expression of that spiritual connection that he had with Jesse. It was
yeah.
great.
I mean,
Yeah.
Jesse is his hero, right? And for somebody who you look up to so much to do something like this and never be able to find out why.
Yeah.
Um, I also wanted that to be reflected in his voice. He's a bit of a naive teenager. Um, he's a little kept back, both in his own language, but also in how he approaches the world. He's not savvy. He's not that quick-witted teenager who has an answer for every adult who throws something at him, right? And
Hmm.
I think I like that too. And then so the voice that he hears is in very small, simple snippets. I'm
Yeah.
here. Come see me.
Yeah.
And I imagined that as the only thing that he could possibly hear. I mean, even if Jesse had somehow been able to project that voice in paragraphs
Yeah.
over the distance, he wouldn't hear that.
Yeah.
His life is very much in single sentences, and he's processing things at a sentence level, sort of like moment by moment. So yeah, Yeah, Jesse was interesting too. That, and I did include that as a bit of magical realism. It's not ever explained. It's just there, right? And that's his connection
Yeah.
with his hero.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was great. Um, so we're going to talk about Kids Help Phone, and I want to talk about how important gun reform and mental health awareness is. But I want to get into this very writerly question about how your life has been for the last. I'm going to assume it's probably 3 heavy duty years of getting these 2 books, Boy and Nothing But Life, and now your short story collection coming out in 2022. So how did you manage that from writer to writer? What did you do? How did
Talk
you?
about sentence by sentence and moment by
Yeah,
moment, it feels like, especially for the last year. It's just been such a whirlwind. And I know, I know I'm not alone in that.
yeah,
We're all definitely feeling that. Um, First of all, I think I'm very blessed. I'm very privileged to be able to put you know, that 3 books in the last 4 years out into the world. And I know a lot of writers can't say that. So that's, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah,
hmm
to be able to do
yeah,
that. On a practical level, I'm a fairly regimented writer. In fact, I see Anthony is here. I remember when we were sitting on stage at my first time at Junction Reads, and somebody asked about writing habits, and I was trying to be all wise. I was like, write every day, and Anthony very graciously said, no, don't do that. He said, I mean, he's kind of like this, but no, it's very, very sage advice, because although I try to have a regular writing habit, um, and I do have I'm a very habitual writer. Every morning I get in front of the computer as much as I can. But if I can't, I don't stress out about it. And especially for the last year, being able to step away to do something other than writing has been so valuable. And I guess over the past few years as well. So the output has been there. I've been able to produce manuscripts and stories and those kinds of things. But I've also made it really a priority to step away. Like I mentioned earlier, that artistic context to hard things. Well, I think life's kind of like that too. I like to step away and do something to give what I'm doing a little bit more contextual meaning, even if it's binging on Netflix or tickling my girls till they pee, like all of those, which I don't do often. But that kind of thing, those joys. So it's been a real mix of joy and also challenge, especially for the last year. I mean, naturally, everybody was affected by the pandemic. My books were originally supposed to be coming out in I think it was spring and fall of 2020, and everything got pushed back a season.
mhm,
So on that level, it's been an adjustment. Putting books out in the middle of this has been very strange and
yeah,
wonderful. Virtual events exclusively. I had planned for I had big ideas to sort of duplicate my launch that I had for Saints Unexpected. Bring my family and friends. Come, let me sign all your books. And
yeah.
that can't happen. Um, yeah, it's been a real ride, and I feel pretty fortunate to be able to get to a place where I can hold up 3 books and say, these are mine. Thank you. They're out in the world. Yeah, and what next, right? I loved earlier how you got a little tripped up on whether it was 2020, and it's just like that. Like it's just been
Right.
so time has no meaning
Where
right now.
are we? Yeah.
Where are we? Yeah, I hope I answered your question. It's been strange and
Yeah.
wonderful.
No, no, for sure. I think, well, and it's funny that you mentioned time because I had a question in the back of my mind that I wanted to talk about the relationship of time that we're all experiencing right now and how that is incorporated in your writing quite a bit. The idea of the time we're experiencing now and the escaping the past or with Boy, moving between the past and the present.
Mm.
Um, so how is that? How is that a theme that just grabs you and has become a part of a lot of your writing?
It's always amazing to have somebody give that back to me and say, this is what's in your writing. You know, um, my early days of writing when straight out of university and lots of deep themes, lots of meaning, lots of those. But I try not to do that now. I try not to write with themes in mind.
Hmm.
I try to let the characters move me or let the plot move to see where it goes. So I have a feeling it's subconscious. I have a feeling I have my own conflicted relationship with my own past and my family past or the city's past, and that's starting to come out. And well, I shouldn't say starting to, because you're right, it has come out so far in 3 for 3 books where
Yeah.
time has played such an important role. I got a really lovely review for Boy, actually, from the Hamilton Review of Books,
Okay.
where I'm drawing a blank on her name, Jennifer McCarthy. Anyway, the reviewer zeroed in as on Boy within the cultural moment with the pandemic, and I had never really thought about it that way. But how lovely, that can sort of have planted seeds in her own mind about and what was meaningful to her, and that happens again and again and again. Um,
Yeah.
I can't say that I never put themes into my writing. I can't do that. I just, yeah, I think it happens. But anytime I get there and I realize I'm doing it, I say, okay, I have to be really careful not to be too heavy handed with it.
Yeah. No,
But
it's
it's a lovely compliment that there's something that sort of reaches through those 3 books. Yeah, it's amazing.
yeah. And it made me, I mean, this one definitely made me think of Saints Unexpected because and in the time that we're living in right now, trying to figure out the the losses, right? And not living in this in the doom and gloom, but just reflecting on the, pre-COVID times or the pre-Hamilton times for Dills, and to be able to move forward or to see the light at the end of the tunnel or the pot of gold or whatever. It made a connection for me anyway.
I think a good story will do that. I like
Yeah.
that a good story, if it's not a pot of gold, it'll be something else. But I think a good story will point you at something. Doesn't
Yes.
always lead you right there, but it might point at something glimmering that you want at the base
Yeah.
of the rainbow. That's wonderful. What a lovely image.
Yeah, that's why I have such a hard time. I was talking to someone else about writing reviews. I have a really hard time with this idea of writing a review because I feel like it is supposed to be something that's not just 100% positive. But I find when I'm reading a book, and I mean, to be perfectly honest, for the last year, I've known the people who've written the books that I'm
Mhm.
that I'm reading,
Right.
but I find it really hard to not see the positive in everything, even if it's a book of poetry that I'm absolutely challenged to connect. I grab the words and I think about the words. So I find it I find it difficult to not walk away from a book having something, taking
Yeah,
something with me.
looking for that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk. I think before we talk about Kids Help Phone and we plug the launch and all that, I think we've got a question. Kaylee, do we?
Yep, we have a question for Brent from David. David says, a reading is a performance, and you add so much extra color and nuance when the author is reading their own words. With dialogue, how do you try and get as much conversational nuance as you can onto the page? Or is it the reader's job to add that?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a good one. Basically the question is kind of, if I'm hearing it correctly, is how to make dialogue feel like dialogue, but also do a little bit more than just people exchanging views about the weather. Um, yeah, that's a really good question. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got for developing dialogue is avoid small talk at all costs. Um, I just did it. I said and ah. You got to avoid those pauses. So that's a very practical consideration. If we see our character saying yes or no or mm-mm, or too often, then okay, do I need those things or can I get right to the meat of what they're trying to say? I also really enjoy finding ways to get characters to say no to each other without saying no. That is one really good way of making sure that you're getting to the heart of a good piece of dialogue. Um, I also really enjoy people responding without responding to what the person said. Somebody will ask a question, but they give a completely different answer. I think one of the big ways of dialogue that one of the roles that it can really perform is to drive the conflict. And having people disagree, even when they don't realize they're disagreeing, is pretty great way to drive conflict. Makes it interesting for the reader too, I think. And on a performance level, And I can tell you just before, I hadn't read that passage out loud before. And I have accents in my mind for the way Gal speaks. And I had to tell myself, I will not try to do that. I will leave that to the reader to hear that accent.
Mhm.
I've described Gal's accent a little bit, but after that, yeah, in performance, I am definitely not going to try my hand at an Israeli accent or even like we meet me as parents later on in the novel as well. I'm not going to try to do their accents as well. So I think it is up to leaving a lot to the reader too.
Yeah, I thought you did that well with Gal. The no contractions and the very uh elaborate way that he spoke. I thought I didn't necessarily hear a voice, but I definitely like I didn't hear a specific accent, but I definitely heard that he was speaking with an accent. So you did.
I did a little research about how Hebrew and English are different grammatically. I tried to I tried to listen to Israelis speaking English to try and catch some of those little word turnarounds that happen when your grammar is different. So yeah, there's a little bit of that in there too. And he's, yeah, formal. And often, people whose language is not the first language that, well, speaking, did I say that rightly? People who are speaking a language that is not their first language,
Right.
often quite formal when they're speaking a second language too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because most of the time they're acquiring it from reading or vocabulary and uh,
strict headmasters. I always imagine.
rules and yeah, yeah. Kaylee, do we have any more questions before we talk about the? Okay, so let's talk about Kids Help Phone. And one of the first things that I saw when you mentioned Nothing But Life to me was this discussion of gun reform and trying desperately to get guns out of the hands of people who can do what Jesse did in this book. So talk about how important it was for you to connect this novel to Kids Help Phone and all of these important social themes.
Yeah, it's I have military service, and so I'm intimately familiar with the workings and the effects of weaponry. I was a medic in the armed forces in the early 90s, and so I was really good at shooting, and I enjoyed it a lot. And I also learned what our guns do to each other in a very intimate way. But that was then. That was a very specific role for that kind of weaponry. And now that I am not in that environment anymore, I just personally think it is completely nonsensical that the average person, and it's hard here in Canada to be fair, but the average person being able to get their hands on an assault weapon,
Yeah.
um, it boggles my mind. And so gun control for me is a really big thing. I always preface it with that story about how much I enjoyed shooting and I was really good at it. And I really enjoyed it. It was a wonderful time to practice my skills. I had to learn a lot of difficult things, but that's a very particular need that we have, people with guns. The rest of us don't need them.
Mhm.
And so in general, I'm pretty open about how I feel about guns in the hands of the rest of us, and myself now included. I have no need to own a gun. I don't own a gun. I could, but I don't. And then in terms of the other part of this, and which became a little bit bigger as the novel started coming out of me, was the idea of the mental health side of things and what Dills was going through in his mind as a result of this incredible experience. So gun control, and again, it was almost there was a conscious effort now once I realized that I cared more about Dill in terms of how he was processing things than the mechanics of what happened to him, if that makes any sense. I didn't care as much about the gun control side of the book as I did about where he was in the moment. Once the mental health side of things started to really come out, that's when the book was really born for me. And as a result, when it came time to sort of look at how I could celebrate the launch of the novel, in addition to this being a very strange time in terms of, well, how can I do something that will help somebody else? Because there's so many of us disconnected from each other right now.
Mhm.
It was really clear that I needed to do something to address that mental health side of things. And then I heard an interview, and I don't remember exactly, or read an interview. I don't exactly remember whether it was a read or a watched thing, but the Kids Help Phone early on in the pandemic it was very clear that their resources were being strained to their limits. And for obvious reason, we have youth all over the show here, incredibly disconnected from their peer groups and their communities. And so they were reaching out a lot more, and they were strained. And that came back to me when it came time to plan. And I thought, there it is. That's what I'm going to do my focus on. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, just imagining a kid like Dill's trying to live through this pandemic, right? Like not being able to hang out with Mia or Gal or anybody, and trying to process everything that he's going through without anybody, right?
Yep.
And living in a house with his mom and his grandmother and his aunt and all of that.
Yeah,
to-
our own immediate communities that we have been so intimately arranged with for the past
Mhm.
year. I wouldn't personally trade it for anything. I think there's been a lot of amazing connection that's been made here in my own home. I think we're a lot closer, but we don't have teenagers. We don't have,
Yeah.
and I know from my relatives and friends who have teenagers that the teenagers in particular have been really struggling with it.
Yeah.
I'm really, really, even though they love their families and they of course enjoy the time that they spend with their families, being disconnected from that daily sort of almost like a pressure cooker release valve of being able to just vent with your friends before the school day or outside the school or wherever, that's been very clear that that's the case. So
Yeah.
I could see that being something that Dill would access.
Yeah.
I think having a non-judgmental, completely anytime, 24/7 call or text or email or chat online. What do you need? Let's figure out a way to help you. I think that's just amazing. I thought that was really, really cool. I love that about their mandate to the Kids Help Phone. Just it's
Yeah.
completely, absolutely non-judgmental. And it's, if you need help, we're going to help you no matter what. So, and I think that's true of a lot of charities. I don't mean to suggest that Kids Help Phone is the only one suffering because of the pandemic, because a lot of charities are desperately underfunded. But there's so many good charities out there that do exactly that same thing. They look at the need and they say, it doesn't matter where that need came from. We're going to meet that need right now. So you feel loved, you feel met, and you feel community in some way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I really like about a lot of these charities like the Kids Help Phone. So
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And I'm happy to support it. And I'm glad that we've got Kaylee's got the links up there for anybody if you want to click on it. Brent's website and his launch page are also up there, and you can directly link to the fundraiser that is specifically connected to Nothing But Life.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Oh, and also we're having some fun with it too. So there are some prize giveaways and other things.
yes.
I've had so many people respond and say, I'm looking at it right now on the other side of the computer here.
That stack of books.
Big stack of 12 books just donated by local, and a couple from Penguin Random House and Simon and Schuster, and the rest were donated by, one was by Dundurn, my publisher, two actually, and then Invisible, my other publisher. And yeah, it's been really neat. It's really neat. So we're going to draw for that. A couple of writer friends have offered their services for anybody who is interested in maybe having an essay or short story worked on with them. A couple of friends who are good at editing. Yeah, drawing a bit of a blank. What's the third thing? What's my third thing? Oh yes, four. There's four actually. There's a Relay Coffee gift basket that can be delivered anywhere in the area here for locals. And then the fourth thing is a flash draw for a signed copy of my book this weekend. So anybody who makes a donation of any amount this weekend, I will get them a signed copy of my book to wherever they are by 8 p.m. tonight, but I won't be watching the clock. I probably won't look at it till tomorrow morning.
Right. Fantastic. And so the launch is this Thursday. It starts at what time? 8
p.m.
8
And
p.m.
it's going to be taking place on Facebook Live as well as YouTube. And you can link to through my website. You can take whichever one you like better, whether it's Facebook or YouTube. You can link through there, as well as you'll see it if you follow me on Facebook, you'll see event listings as well.
Yeah, that's great. Kaylee, do we have any questions? I saw David put his hand up and then it disappeared. No, good. Okay. That's great. So Heather is here. I want to give a shout out to Heather. She has put a copy of Nothing But Life in the mail for me. Hello. Um, for me to raffle off today. So Kaylee has put everyone's names in a box, and she's going to raffle off a copy of Nothing But Life.
Cool. I think Heather's traveling though. I
Yeah,
see
what are you
a
doing
really
on a
nice
beach?
background. This is not fair.
All right. The winner for this raffle is Christina Jaeger or Jaeger.
Is she here?
She was earlier.
Yep, she's here.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yay.
Woo-hoo.
That's awesome. She was here 2 seconds ago. Oh, hi, Christina. So
Hello.
you can send me an email directly to junctionwrites@gmail.com, and I will make arrangements to get that book to you. I think it's coming to me, right, Heather?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it's coming to me, and I will make sure that that gets out to you. Congratulations.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thank you everybody for coming. Brent, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to see you. This is my weekly dose of human being connectivity. Anthony, Christina, Heather, thank you everyone for coming.
Yes,
We're
here's the
here.
for sure.
Yes, we're here again next. I will see you again on Thursday. I will definitely be at the launch. And I'm going to be right back here with Kaylee next Sunday. We're going to talk to Alicia Elliott. She's going to give us a little bit of mind spread out on the ground, but she's writing a novel, which sounds incredible. We were talking about it this week, and she might, if I convince her, give us an eensy beensy bit of poetry that she's been writing. So I hope you guys can join us. Brent, congratulations. It's been a fantastic couple of years, and I'll see you on Thursday.
Yes. Thank you again.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Kaylee. Bye.